Alright, so this film has the most disturbing scenes of any film I saw last year. And it's also by far the goriest and has the best body horror of any film also released in 2023. And there's also several other reasons why this film was my best horror film of 2023, but we'll get into that right now. So the story is centered around two brothers who discover that their neighbor's son has been possessed and impregnated by a demonic force, and they need to flee or find a way to beat it before the damn thing gives birth to Lucifer. But the catch is that if they don't kill the demon the right way, then things will become significantly worse, and we'll talk about exactly how later. So the film starts with the main character Pedro and his brother Jimmy as they hear these loud ass gunshots off in the distance. Jimmy thinks that it might be their neighbor Ruiz or a poacher, but Pedro's like, nah, poachers don't normally let off so many shots. So they prepare to head out to see who the hell is causing all the fuss on what might be their land, depending how close they are. They think it might be on their land or it might be in the woods, but instead of going out that night, they decide to head out the next morning after the shots have stopped. And here is where they discover the dismembered body parts of someone they think that might be their neighbor Ruiz. But it's kind of hard to tell though, since they can't really identify him from his damn legs alone. I mean, it's not like Ruiz was always wearing the latest Jordans or anything, so they really don't know. But anyway, Pedro and Jimmy continue to investigate the crime scene, and they also acknowledge that it's a clean cut, which it was. That lower half with the guts pouring out was like a damn local deli slice of ham. So understandably enough, they figured that it might not be an animal that caused this. Also during this time, near that stranger's ass and legs, the brothers discover a briefcase containing some kind of weird item or tool, but we don't know what it's for just yet, or what it is. Jimmy tells Pedro that he's seen it somewhere before, but he can't really remember, so thanks for nothing, Jimmy. Jimmy starts theorizing about Ruiz being the killer, or having some kind of involvement here, but soon it becomes pretty clear that Jimmy doesn't really know shit, and that he's just talking out of his ass just to hear himself talk, so Pedro tells him to shut up. They find a book nearby that belonged to the stranger and notices that the person has info about their neighbor Maria Elena, who lives around the corner. So they head over to her place and finds out that she was actually expecting the guy, but they're letting her know that he can't make it because, you know, he's just ass and legs now. But she tells them that the guy was actually on his way to kill her son Uriel because, well, he has to. And understandably, the brothers are like, what the fuck are you talking about, Maria Elena? So they head inside to see Uriel, and he's this big, fat, pissy, shitty, demon-infested ass monster. I mean, Uriel looks like he's just been shitting himself for weeks and just soaking in it. And I'm sorry for that disgusting description, guys, but I just had to drive my point home. So Maria Elena tells the brothers that Uriel is possessed and how he's been rotten for a long time. And this is basically how they refer to someone who's been possessed. They're rotten. She said that she thought by praying maybe they could heal him, but Pedro cuts her off and tells her that churches are dead, almost like a lost art. And it seems like people in this world where they are now have given up on religion to some extent, like they just don't believe in it or it doesn't work. And that's probably why shit like this is beginning to happen to them. At least that's the point I'm getting from the film so far. But also keep in mind that the director himself also says that, you know, churches being dead and religion not being a thing isn't really the reason why this evil is happening to these people. So, you know, hey, you make up your own mind about it. And also, once again, Ruiz is looking disgusting as the camera cuts back to him. I mean, it looks like booger juice is just draining from his mouth. I'm sorry, guys, it looks terrible. Uriel's younger brother, who I don't think we ever get a name for throughout the film, also reveals that they reported this insanity to the authorities over a year ago, but obviously no one has done anything. So Pedro and Jimmy head to the local police station to get some answers. Policia, I think that's how you say it in Spanish. But these guys refuse to believe them and claim that many cases of possession are fake. And also we find out that the guy whose ass and legs are still in the woods is what they refer to as a cleaner, for obvious reasons. That's obvious, right? I feel like that's obvious. But if it's not, they call him a cleaner because he's there to basically exorcise the demon, but it's not really an exorcist because he's not ridding the demon of the guy. He's basically just killing the guy in a way to where the demon can't transfer to another person. Basically so the evil won't spread is a better explanation. But anyway, the police are like, y'all are just tripping your nuts off, or you need to go sit down somewhere. And the guy in charge is like, we'll just call public health and let them handle it because it ain't our problem. And honestly, these policemen are just useless as hell. Even if they don't believe in the whole possession story, these guys also just reported a murder. And last time I checked, check, that was a damn good reason to call the authorities. But apparently these guys would just rather sit around all day and just fist each other. Next, we finally catch up to Ruiz, and the brothers inform him that the cops aren't worth a damn. And also they tell him that the mayor is aware, and he don't get shit neither. And also the brothers tell Ruiz that the policeman said that if they get the news out, they'll mark the town and then they'll lose everything. And basically they're just threatening them with, if they tell everyone about what's going on in this small town of poverty, they will take everything from them. And in this moment, it seems like Ruiz is like a father who left his family and doesn't really care much. And mainly because this is his family and his son that he's being informed about, and the guy is like, let's close our mouths and just leave. So it seems like he left his previous family to start a new family, because he's got a baby with another chick, but we'll get into that later. Ruiz also tells the brothers Pedro and Jimmy that his 4 dogs left a month ago, and how the evil forces make the animals go batshit first, and then they make the deceased go crazy. Ruiz thinks that the demonic outbreak was a setup by the state to take his land, and basically it's sort of revealed that they all kind of feel this way because it's hard for them to believe that a small nowhere town like theirs is dealing with an outbreak like this. After that, during that night, Ruiz is having dinner with his wife, and all of a sudden he's like, to hell with this, I'm gonna go stand on some business. So he rushes off to Maria Elena's place with a double-barrel shotgun to kill his stinky demon-infected son. But in this moment, Maria begins to beg him to not kill evil this way, because if he does, things will get worse. The demons will kill them, take their bodies and their souls, those damn greedy bastards. She stresses to him that it must be done by a professional. Things grow more intense and Ruiz is ready to kill everybody, but he points the gun back at Uriel. Then Uriel, the demon side, starts calling his bluff, then starts threatening to kill Ruiz, and then moving into his wife's belly and possessing his unborn child. Just talking all that demon shit. So at this time, there's 2 things that you guys need to know about this movie. First, killing demons with guns is like trying to put out fire with gasoline. It don't work here. Next, the movie has no mercy for children. And when it comes to that, it's actually worse than Terrifier at the moment. That is until we get Terrifier Part 3. But When Evil Lurks is a very ruthless film, so just keep that in mind. I mean, I'm literally going to have to do something here that I never really do on my channel, which is blur out a lot of the scenes and can't really show much of this stuff because it gets really brutal. So we cut away from this scene and we see Ruiz crying in his truck outside. The next morning, his wife arrives with the brothers, and it's revealed that Ruiz didn't kill Uriel. So now Ruiz's bright idea is to take the big stank demon 2 or 3 hours away just to get it away, hoping that this will fix the problem. And Pedro and Jimmy are kind of idiots if we're being honest, because they're letting Ruiz make all of these major decisions when it's clear that he's just making a bunch of knee-jerk decisions. And it's like once they caught up with his character, they stopped sort of thinking for themselves. And I don't want to be too hard on the brothers here because this is something that they haven't really dealt with before and they don't really know much about it, and it seems like everyone else they encounter seems to know a little bit more than they do, so they're just sort of following along hoping that they're doing the right things, but still these guys need to think a little bit more for themselves. But anyway, all 3 of them drag this funky poop dripping demon infected guy to the truck, and this looks like pure torture. I mean, I think I'd rather just pack my shit and leave town because this just looks disgusting. So they end up driving about 300 kilometers or roughly 186 miles away, and Ruiz is like, do you guys think this is far enough? And Pedro's like, well, hell, let's check the body out and then let's just drive 100 more miles. Also, it seems like Pedro has the scent on him, which probably smells like 500 pounds of rotten ass. So afterwards, their plan is to burn the clothes. Right after this, they almost hit a kid in the road, which causes them to swerve. Once they finally arrive at the dumping spot, they realize that the fat demon infected son is gone and how he more than likely flew off when they almost hit the kid. But rewinding back to that scene, I didn't see a damn thing, so he must have really flew when he came off. Ruiz is like whatever and says fuck it, that's far enough anyway, and doesn't really bother looking for the body, and then he parts ways with the brothers. Then they all try to return to their lives like everything's back to normal, but I mean, like, come on. But anyway, there's a crazy storm that night, and the next morning one of Ruiz's goats have been possessed. He wants to shoot it, but his wife is like, nah, don't use the gun, use the axe. He shoots it anyway, and his wife gets expedited possession. I mean, immediately after he shoots the goat, she gets controlled by evil and takes the same axe and kills him and herself, which is by far the craziest scene I've seen from any movie this year. Like, watching her smash the axe into her own face was just like, Jesus Christ. Back with Pedro and Jimmy, Jimmy sees the shadows growing like things are slowly becoming more ominous. Then Uriel's younger brother shows up and he wants to stay the night with them because his mom disappeared. He also tells the brothers that Ruiz and his wife are both dead, and he tells them that they did the wrong thing by taking the fat funky demon away. Also in this moment, Jimmy feels like Uriel's little brother is just lying because he feels like his mother would never abandon him. And the last thing he tells the brothers before he walks away to go to sleep in the barn is that they should not use electric lights because the shadows call in evil. So I guess bow and arrows, axes, candles, and shit like that are the best way to go. So Pedro and Jimmy decide to leave and not take anything but the clothes on their backs. So the new plan is for Pedro to get his kids and get the hell away from this place. And this is basically what I was saying earlier. This was pretty much their plan before they ran into Ruiz and started investigating that whole situation, which was worth a try, but I'm just saying, in my opinion anyway, their original plan was the right way to go. So they leave town to head to the city where Jimmy drops off Pedro at his ex's house so he can round up everyone. And this whole situation just goes terribly. Pedro's bright idea is to wait to change his clothes at his ex's house when it would have made more sense to change them and burn the old ones before he got there. So he starts arguing with his ex Sabrina, who has a kid with this other guy and two boys which are Pedro's kids. She thinks he's just running into their home to ruin their happiness and that he's lying about there being a rotten that's causing a demon breakout. Also, she has a restraining order on Pedro, so yeah, they don't really have a shared custody situation going on right now. So during all this commotion with them arguing and whatnot, the dog starts sniffing Pedro's clothes before he burned them. Then the dog gets infected and bites the little girl's face, the one kid that's not Pedro's kid. The dog ragdolls this little girl and drags her down the street to the point where Pedro and the others have to run out to search for them. I mean, this whole scene is just ridiculous. The cops were called on Pedro, but this was during the time the little girl was being attacked. He tries to tell the cops not to shoot the dog, but he forgets about Leo, who's running the streets with a gun already, looking to kill the dog. Pedro eventually catches up to Leo, who is his ex's new man if I hadn't mentioned that already, and he finds him blowing the dog's head off. So he leaves to head back to the house to just gather his kids and get the hell out of there. He gets back to see that his ex's daughter Vicky is magically back to normal and is unharmed, although the dog was just feasting on her face a few minutes earlier. So the math ain't mathin'. So Pedro goes to get his boys once again so they can get the hell out. The oldest, Jair, is autistic and the youngest is named Centino. The oldest, who is once again autistic, knows where the car keys are, but Pedro is struggling to get him to speak to tell him. So he gets it out of him by promising him some apple ice cream once they leave. So they jump in the car while baby girl is in the front yard telling her mom that when dad comes home, things are going to go boom. And a couple seconds later, Leo pulls up and smashes both of them into the wall with his truck, killing his wife and daughter. After the crash, we see little Vicky still alive dancing around, and we already know that the demon juice is alive and well inside of her. But what matters in this moment the most is that Pedro makes it out with his sons, and also makes it over to his mom's place to get her and his brother Jimmy. What's kind of weird here though is that we don't really know if this was always the plan. Like, what was the plan going to be if Pedro was unsuccessful at getting his ex's SUV? Was his brother Jimmy eventually going to circle back through if Pedro couldn't convince them to leave with him or steal the car? We just have to take this whole situation at face value since we don't get to see these moments of communication. So now that Pedro has his kids, brother, and mom, they are all heading out of town. His mom tells them the 7 rules to remember when dealing with a possessed one. Rule number 1 is don't use electric lights. Number 2 is don't stay close to animals. 3 is don't take anything that was close to them. I guess this means personal items or belongings. It might have some demon juice on it or something. 4 is don't hurt them. 5 is never name the evil by its name. Like, you know, Lucifer, like that. 6 is don't shoot them with firearms, and suddenly her dementia kicks in and she can't remember the 7th rule. Damn it, Granny, you only had one job. So Pedro's autistic son is in the back seat going nuts because he wants that apple ice cream that he was promised earlier. Pedro stops to get some but can't find any, so oldest boy Jair is just out of luck on that flavor at the moment, but he gets something. During this time, his mom gets a call from Sabrina. Yeah, this Sabrina. But at this time, Pedro is the only one who knows how fucked up this is because he was the only one out of all of them who actually saw her die. So he walks away from the car to take the call, and it's also kind of weird that he didn't tell everyone else about Sabrina sooner, about the fact that she died. But anyway, on the phone, she tells Pedro that she's coming for her kids. And also she shits on him in this moment and tells him that's why she cheated on him and got ran through by a bunch of men. And also he gave her a broken child, just a cold bitch. But of course, we we know that this is just the demon talking. Pedro begins to break down and tells Jimmy about Sabrina's death. Also, I'm pretty sure that Jimmy wears the same facial expression throughout the whole movie. It's pretty funny. It's just anger and confusion, or maybe angry confusion. I don't know. So Pedro realizes that he brought the infection to his family and he regrets not leaving sooner. Cause like, yeah, you guys definitely should have left sooner instead of bullshitting with Ruiz, who's dead now. But hey, hopefully they'll stop making dumb decisions, right? Right? So after a pep talk from Jimmy, Pedro is back on his feet and they head to go see someone who Jimmy thinks can help. Mirta. Mirta is a cleaner, or was a cleaner, and she tells Jimmy that Jair looks rotten, aka possessed. But Jimmy is like, well, he looks that way because he's autistic. The boy's autistic. And she's like, nah, something's wrong with that boy. Mirta has seen a possessed one before, and she has lived through an event like this prior. Even apparently told Jimmy in the past that she got used to living among them. So Jimmy actually was successful at finally being useful in this movie. Finally, Jimmy tells Mirta about Yurio and how he's not sure if he was a possessed one or not, but she's like, oh, you would have known. There would be no doubt. She says babies wouldn't cry, shadows start moving, and animals start doing things they would never do. Basically the things we've already mentioned previously. Weird shit would just start happening. Night comes and Jair doesn't want to leave the car, so Pedro goes to spend the night with him in the car instead. Right now everyone's beginning to fall asleep, but outside the car we can see someone walking up to the window, and then they place a bloody hand on the glass near Jair, and it looks like it's his mom. In this moment I was thinking, how in the hell did she even find them in the first place? But there's kind of an explanation for it later. Anyway, 2 seconds later, Sabrina teleports inside the house upstairs and grabs the youngest boy, Santino, who's upstairs sleeping with his grandmother. The grandmother wakes up, but of course she doesn't think anything's wrong because of course it's his mom, Sabrina, and she doesn't know that Sabrina was killed. So yeah, she doesn't really think anything's out of place here because she doesn't know. Jimmy alerts Pedro and their mom tells him how there's someone upstairs with baby boy. She says at first that she thought it was Sabrina, but something ain't right about her. Now, why didn't anyone try to save the baby before alerting Pedro? I have no clue. But the grandmother also admits that she was scared and didn't know what to do. So yeah, whatever. So they wake Pedro and he heads upstairs to stand on business. And I like saying that because it sounds funny. The demon mom is up there still holding the baby and Pedro watches as she leaps from the balcony with him. I mean, his reaction time here just pisses me off. I mean, he had plenty of time to snatch her ass up, but like I've already said, sometimes in this film, like 50% of the time, Pedro is an idiot. He then runs downstairs and we can see that the mom has escaped with his son. The demon bitch just teleported into the woods and is long gone. As they run around searching for her, Mirta notices that Jair has a demon inside of him because his feet and hands are all snapped the f up. She also says that this happens when a demon gets trapped inside of an autistic person's body and can't figure out their minds. The demon basically gets stuck in limbo. And it was so funny to me picturing a demon trying to control this kid's mind, and I felt like it probably looks similar to SpongeBob trying to get his driver's license. Anyway, Mirta takes Pedro and Jimmy back inside and provides them with more vital info. We also finally get to see a clear image of what this exorcism demon killer tool looks like fully built. Mirta tells Pedro that he broke the 7th rule and that's basically why his wife found them. So yeah, this kind of is the explanation of why she was able to track them down. She tells him that if he wasn't afraid of her taking the kids, she wouldn't be there. So I mean, basically staying safe here requires some serious mental strength. If you start worrying about certain shit, you do the wrong thing, basically you become a target. Which she also kind of gets into this why the demons can't control thoughts of people like them, but it can manipulate them. And it sounds like she's talking about people who are afraid to make mistakes in life. These kind of people are considered to be more vulnerable to the demon's ability to control their thoughts. That's my understanding anyway. Pedro wants to go save his son, but his fears of losing his son basically makes the demon stronger. So they decide to send his brother Jimmy to go save him instead. Mirta tells them that they have to go find the rotten and kill the man before the beast is born. She tells them that all the hell that's breaking loose right now is just a part of the birth process and that it has only freed the demon's essence, Jesus, and they need to go kill it before it's actually born. Mirta tells the brothers that they are idiots for moving the rotten knowing that he was possessed, and of course I have called them idiots as well, so I agree with Mirta. And apparently they can see from outside that the power was cut in the city and that the protocol has been activated. So apparently in this world, they have a protocol for when demons get out of hand or there's been some sort of viral demon infection. So she tells Jimmy to be careful and not to use lights or that's going to be his ass, because that's basically the way he has to travel to find Pedro's son, his nephew. Pedro and Mirta head in the other direction to locate the rotten. And as they travel out there, Mirta tells Pedro how her husband was a shepherd and how they owned a church and how they were frauds. She said the first possessed one in Buenos Aires appeared in their church, which is the capital of Argentina, and she thought it was a hired actor until he puked all over them. She says that he puked up the family that he had eaten from the previous night, grandma and grandpa just all over the damn church floor in throw up form. She says God is dead and that the time of churches are over, which is kind of the line we heard from Pedro in the beginning of the film. She said later monks appeared at their church, known as cobras, and taught them how to kill demons before they were born. And basically she's been kicking demon ass now for almost 12 years. Apparently her husband was also a cleaner and he never returned from a cleaning because the demons like to ambush cleaners and murder them, as we saw earlier in the movie. She said that she had to escape by leaving everything behind and everything she knew. She said she wonders if the demon found her in Jimmy's head and his memory of her. And it's just like, damn, there's pretty much no escaping some shit like this unless you fake your death, tell no one, then leave town and take nothing. And that still might not be enough, but basically what they're saying is this is sort of the procedure that has to take place for you to get away from this demon infection. Then Pedro is like, well, if it still wants you so bad, why didn't it come snatch you up instead of taking my son? And she was like, because you're the one who's afraid. You the scared one, motherfucker. So Pedro just shuts her up after that because, well, there's nothing else he can say. Out on the road with Jimmy, he finally finds Sabrina and the baby, but it's not a save. There won't be any saving happening here because she's out here just snacking on her son's brains while she's just casually walking along the street. So Jimmy does some kamikaze type shit by driving into her and then crashing into a tree. Back with Pedro and Mirta, they can't seem to find him on the road, so they come across a sign for a school. And Mirta's like, well, he must be there because evil likes children and children like evil. And honestly, she might be onto something with that statement. So as they head over to the school, we cut back to Jimmy for a brief second as he's got evil Sabrina's head just hanging through his window and she ain't really talking about nothing. And back at Mirta's place, Jair's demon figured out that head of his and now he's hungry. Then we cut back to Pedro and Mirta as they pull up to the school and Pedro is like, how do you know it's not too late? But Mirta tells him that it's not too late because birds and crickets are still chirping. And apparently evil likes to feed on the sound of nature when it's first born. So yeah, Pedro goes to look through the school window and he sees the creepiest shit. He sees a bunch of students just sitting around a classroom in the middle of the night like they're in some kind of damn trance. Once inside the school, Mirta asked one of the kids if they're hiding the rotten and she's like, no. But hell, see, my thing is if you already know what I'm talking about before I tell you what I'm looking for, then you've already given it away. I already know you're lying. The kids don't really say anything though, and basically the little rude bastards just shush her. And apparently after they shush her, the kids mouths just smell like Bigfoot ass, which causes Mirta to run outside and throw up. Mirta tells Pedro that the kids won't help them because they are probably hiding it and how kids like to protect the rotten. While outside, there's this demon kid approaching from the darkness, and it's definitely that same kid from the day that Pedro, Jimmy, and Ruiz went to go dump the rotten. But the little kid just keeps his mouth shut and just runs inside the school. Pedro gets upset and wants to whip the kid's ass, but Mirta tells him that they can't afford to make mistakes, and basically how they must keep an eye on each other and watch each other's backs because she's about to get dangerous. Later, the kid comes back out and says that Uriel is at the teacher Cortez's house, but then the girl from earlier comes out and tells Pedro that the other kid is lying and tells him that Uriel is actually at her house in the hills. And then Pedro just finally snaps. He knocks the girl to the ground with the car door. Then he jumps out, jumps on top of her and just starts slapping the dog shit out of her. Mirta tells Pedro that the kids are trying to send them away because the rotten is there. Pedro notices that the girl's hands and shoes are covered in the same white chalk that he saw in the school's auditorium on the stage. So he jumps up there and starts snatching up the floor and sees the bodies underneath. And it's pretty much all the bodies of the kids' parents in the school. Mirta tells Pedro that the kids aren't kids anymore and that he needs to grab her tools from the truck but not to run. Don't want to cause any unnecessary excitement in this bitch. Plus, the young girl that caught hands earlier starts yelling and trying to get get them to leave, but they aren't falling for it. So Mirta starts building the Demon Slayer machine and Pedro starts working overtime to rip up the floor panels. The dude is working as hard as he can, but she's still like, hurry your ass up, fool. Pedro's now digging through bodies and eventually he finally finds Mr. Fat Nasty. Mirta tells him that this sharp tool that she has in her hand needs to go in his nape, which is the back of the neck. But of course Pedro can't lift this fat bastard by himself, so he tells Mirta that he needs to dismantle the stage. Then the little white devil child starts telling Pedro that there's an axe that he can use in the room next door. But Mirta tells Pedro that the girl is lying, but being the dumbass that he can be sometimes, he decides to believe her at a time like this. The guy just keeps pissing me off. Plus, I guess it just slipped his mind that he was just slapping the taste out of this little girl's mouth for lying to him outside. Mirta tells Pedro to not leave her alone, but he does it anyway, looking for an axe that turns out to not be there. Surprise, surprise. And Mirta is just getting her head smashed in by a kid with a hammer when he returns to the auditorium. But at this point, I was basically done with the shit for brains character Pedro. The dude has been making terrible choices during the full runtime of the movie. So at this time, Pedro just kills Uriel because, I mean, at this point, pretty much all hope is lost and he's lost everything anyway, except his brother, maybe. So he takes a piece of the Demon Slayer tool and kills the fat stank demon with it. And also, by the way, I really have to say that there are really dope prosthetics and practical effects in this scene. Honestly, the special effects are top tier throughout the whole damn movie, really. I really loved a lot about this movie. It's just these characters, especially Pedro, got on my nerves. But yeah, during this time, little Lucifer is born and he smirks at Pedro like, thanks bitch, and puts like these lines of blood on his head. And he walks out into the world to wreak chaos and create hell on earth. Pedro returns to Mirta's place and Jimmy is still alive and well along with Jair. Also, at least Pedro finally got Jair that apple ice cream. Somebody got a happy ending here. Then after taking a shower, Pedro notices that the marking from the tiny Lucifer boy isn't coming off. More problems to come, I guess. After this, I guess Pedro and Jimmy return home, and Jimmy heads out to the barn to check on Uriel's brother who's been sleeping out there. And he reveals to Jimmy that there was a voice in his head that told him to eat his mom and how he fed the rest to the pigs. Then we cut back to Pedro inside with Jair, who seems to be choking on his spoon at first, but he keeps coughing and starts coughing up blood, then hair, then eventually coughs up his grandma's necklace, Pedro's mom's necklace. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a more depressing ending in my life. Pedro walks outside and just breaks down in front of Jimmy and starts crying as the camera slowly zooms away, and Jimmy is just like, well damn, and just goes and leans over the top of the truck. And this crazy depressing scene is all we see before the screen cuts to black, and now I am in desperate need of a sequel. I mean, now I gotta see these fools get revenge or try to correct this or something. I would love to see things centered around a different main character next time, though, that eventually comes into contact with these characters that also has a better chance at winning. Also, the world and lore that they have created here is just one of the most interesting and ruthless universes I've ever seen. Like, the potential for growth and expansion of this harsh, demonic, infested world would be dope as hell. I can really see them going a lot of different places with this title. And fun fact, the inspiration for this film didn't really come from religion. It came from a series of news stories about farm pesticides that caused health issues in the director's, Demián Rugna's, native country, Argentina. And all of that led to this dark, badass experience of a film, and hopefully we're able to get a sequel in the future. If not, this is still a really dope standoff film, but I would love to see where it goes and see how the universe grows. But either way, thank you guys for watching.